Hi friends, let's begin your training for the next job profile, that is Audit Assistant. Friends, this is also one of the popular job profile that you can select after your graduation. So in this video, which is the first video, we'll try to understand what is audit, who does it and why. Let's understand this with one example. Suppose you are starting a business by giving 1 lakh rupees to a person, but with a condition that that person will run the business. You will give that person salary and incentive, and in return that person is responsible to give you all the profit that is earned in that business. Okay, so once the business start, your focus will be on two things: how that person is running the business, that's first, and second, what is the revenue or profit especially that is earned by that particular business. So where you will find this profit figure? This figure is in profit and loss statement, right? There will be revenues on one side and there will be expenses on another side, and revenue minus expenses will be the profit. In this figure you are interested, right? Now let us imagine a scenario wherein the expenses are increased by booking fake invoices, or your revenue is reduced. So once your revenue is reduced, your profit is also reduced, and that person has used the cash for his own use, so that will be loss for you, right? So how you will ensure that the books of accounts on which the profit and loss, balance sheet and other disclosures are prepared is true and fair. So to ensure that all this is true and fair, you need an audit. So to conclude, audit helps to ensure that the profit that you are getting is based on true and fair statement of accounts. Apart from this, as an owner, the financial statements also helps you to decide whether the business is running good or not. If it's not running good, you will just close it down. So apart from benefiting owners, the audited financial statements also helps government and bankers. Why government? Because the revenue that government collects, the taxes basically, is dependent on this financial statements. And also bankers will refer to audited financial statements to check whether you have the ability to repay or not. That's why audit is important. Also friends, books of accounts are prepared by humans, so there are chances of some errors. So as an auditor is also responsible to identify basically and report these errors, which can be easily identified using normal audit procedures. And since the interest of so many parties are involved, government has made it mandatory for companies to undertake audit. And if you see other forms of businesses like sole proprietary or partnership, if they meet certain condition, then the audit is mandatory for them. And as per law, individuals who has completed chartered accountancy course, that is chartered accountant, are professionally qualified for undertaking audits of company. So let's understand audit. So the audit process starts from planning of audit. So the auditor, when accepts the audit assignment, the first thing that auditor does is to plan the audit. Planning of audit involves two things: preparing audit strategy and preparing audit plan. Audit strategy includes what to cover in audit, when to cover, and the direction of audit. And audit plan includes details of audit procedures that the auditor will undertake. Now let's answer the most important question of this module. What is your role as an audit assistant? So friends, doing audit includes undertaking multiple audit procedures by auditors, and your role is to assist auditor in undertaking all these audit procedures. So let's understand what are these audit procedures. One of the important thing in preparing the plan is to have the knowledge of client's business, and your role starts from here itself, like from the planning stage. So you are required to refer multiple sources from where you will get the knowledge of client's business. The auditor will give you one checklist which you have to fill in, which will majorly includes details of clients, and the sources that you will refer are previous year annual reports, financial statements, management accounts, previous year audit reports, industry publications, regulatory filings, interviews with key personnel, site visits, market research and customer feedback. So there are many things that you can do to get the information regarding client's business. The other thing that you can do is to have inquiries. Inquiries means asking questions to others. Auditor will ask you to interact with individuals and get the information regarding client's business. This entire thing will help you finally to identify some important key accounts which you have to focus on while doing the audit. Sometimes friends, auditor will also take certain meetings with client to discuss multiple scenarios, right? To discuss the procedures, to discuss how to start, with whom to start. And in all these meetings, auditor will ask you to join. And when you are in meeting, you have to take notes, the detailed notes, which you can refer in future. After planning, you will help auditor in collecting audit evidences. Like court need evidences to pass an order, similarly auditor need evidences to give an opinion. So let's see how you will gather this audit evidences, because it will form a major part of your career as an audit assistant. These audit evidences are obtained using multiple audit procedures. One such procedure is test of details, which includes thorough examination of specific items of financial records. Friends, financial records are made up of multiple accounts of revenues, expenses, assets and liabilities. For example, within expense there is a rent account, then there is power and fuel account, advertising account, then again so many expenses and so many revenue accounts. So you have to take each and every account and then perform test of details to find audit evidences. So let's begin with our first account, which is rent account. We will see how we will gather audit evidences in rent account. Friend, what is rent? So every month or after every fixed period, you pay a money to someone who has given their asset or property for you to use, and this is based on one agreement. And if you take an example of any particular company, that company might be using multiples of assets which are rented to the company. So the first thing that you need to do is take this schedule, which will have details of all the rent agreements or the rent payments that company is doing, and get all the copies of rent agreements that the company has entered into. And this will be your input for the audit of rent expense. So once you have this schedule and agreement, the first thing that you will do is take the total of all the amounts which are available in this schedule and try to match it with the amount which is there in your books, basically your P&L account. So if this is matching, then it means that your schedule is correct. It includes all the rent details. The second thing that you will do is the copies of rent agreement that you have received. Check that these agreements are on the name of your company, because it should not happen that the agreement are in name of someone else and company is paying the rent. And third thing that you will do is check whether the amount which is mentioned in the agreement is matching with your amount that you have entered in the schedule and which is booked in the accounts. The fourth thing that you will do is, if the agreement is new, you have to ensure that the rent booking starts from the day of agreement. And if the agreement is ending during the year, you have to ensure that the rent booking stops on that date, which is the last date in the agreement. And the last thing that you need to check is whether there is any escalation clause in the agreement. It means that the amount of rent will increase. So if it is there in the agreement, then you have to check that the amount of rent that is booked is also adjusted as per the clause. Friends, after you do all these procedures, you have to also ensure that you are documenting it. What is documentation? It is a document which states that you have undertaken all these procedures and collected the audit evidences. So this document becomes your audit evidence. How you will prepare a documentation in this case? So when you receive the schedule in Excel format, it will have details of all the rent agreements one by one, right? Rent 1, rent 2, and amount, period, and the payments that you have made. So after this column, which is last column, you will add multiple columns which are your checks. For example, check 1 would be whether the agreement is in the name of company. Check 2 would be whether there is any escalation clause and you have checked it or not. Check 3 will be what is the start date and end date and you have checked it or not. Check 4 would be whether the amount is matching with the amount that you have booked, basically the rent amount in agreement and the rent amount that you have booked in your books. So you will prepare certain columns like this, and in front of each and every rent agreement you will just put a tick that stating that you have checked item A, B, C and D, and this is how you will prepare a documentation, and this will be your audit evidence.